I keep thinking about last night. That dress. Your laugh. The look in your eyes after we. That was the message that slid across my wife's laptop screen like a silent confession. I wasn't looking for secrets. I was looking for a charger. I'd always been the kind of man who built things to be solved. Puzzles. Systems. Spaces where people went to escape, literally. My world was blueprints and hidden mechanisms, locks and illusions. I made a name designing high-end escape rooms, the kind you find hidden inside luxury resorts or tech campuses in the Bay. I never liked spectacle, just design. Logic. Structure. Quiet. Cassandra was the opposite. She moved through the world like it owed her applause. Head of her own luxury event firm, she orchestrated everything from champagne galas to startup launches with symphonic precision. If I built rooms people got lost in, she built rooms they never wanted to leave. Our worlds ran in parallel, but we hadn't touched in a long time. And yet, we were still married. I didn't see the cracks until they'd already split wide open. Looking back, I can track the signs like clues I missed in my own game. It was a Thursday when I found her laptop on the kitchen island. She'd left in a rush, late for a planning session at some vineyard north of Sonoma. I'd been homesick, or at least pretending to be, which I'd done more often lately. Maybe I was avoiding something. Maybe I'd sensed it coming. I needed my charger, but mine was in the studio. Cassandra's laptop sat right there, same model. I figured I'd plug in and grab a boost. When I connected the charger, the screen blinked awake. I didn't touch anything. Didn't type a password. It simply opened. That's when the message appeared. I keep thinking about last night. That dress. Your laugh. The look in your eyes after we. For a moment, I thought it was a pop-up ad. But then I saw the layout, WhatsApp web. And his name, Nico Lang. I'd heard of him in passing. He did corporate magic shows. A traveling illusionist for tech companies and weddings. Cassandra had mentioned him twice. Once when she booked him for a client's Vegas launch, and again when he'd supposedly blown everyone's minds by vanishing from a rooftop during a product demo. I remembered smiling politely. I don't care for magicians. My hands didn't shake. I just scrolled. Their thread wasn't long, they deleted frequently, clearly trying to cover tracks. But a few recent messages remained. Photos. Words. Plans. The flirtation was theatrical. Nico was always performing. But what twisted my stomach was how easily Cassandra played along. She wasn't just sleeping with him. She was enjoying the act. They joked about me. That part one didn't expect. Not just omission mockery. Did the old ghost in the attic notice the new wiring? Please. He's married to his blueprints. The guy probably dreams in drywall. There was laughter in the tone, even through the screen. They referred to our home as the mausoleum, to me as the curator of silence, and to themselves as the show. I didn't close the laptop. I didn't smash it, scream, or call her. I inserted a flash drive, copied the chat export, screenshotted the photos, documented everything. My hands worked without orders, precise as a blueprint. Every click was a brick in a wall I'd already started building in my mind. By the time the files transferred, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to outplay her. Cassandra came home late that night, smelling like hotel bar perfume. She kissed me on the cheek. I didn't flinch. She poured herself a glass of white and walked barefoot across the hardwood, talking about the client's stubbornness, the misprinted menus, the DJ who arrived high. I listened like I always had, quietly. But I was no longer absorbing. I was observing. That was the night the idea started to form. Not revenge. Not yet. Just opportunity. You see, Cassandra had been pushing me to expand. For months, she'd been pitching me on a business merger. My immersive escape room concepts fused with her event production empire. A flagship venue, half experience, half luxury party space. She wanted to co-brand it. Even had a name in mind, Enigma House. I'd resisted. Not because it was a bad idea, because I didn't trust the noise. I liked my world private minimal. She wanted buzz. She wanted press. She wanted, I now realized, him. She'd mentioned bringing Nico in as a creative consultant. Said he had stage instincts that could elevate the design. I remember nodding once, filing it away like a clue from a game I hadn't agreed to play yet. But now, the game was on. The next morning, I agreed to everything. I told her it was a great idea. That we should build Enigma House together. That maybe I'd been too closed off. That she was right, the future was collaboration. She smiled like a woman who believed she'd finally won something. That's when I began my design. I didn't just draw floor plans and clue paths. I built the entire business model from scratch. Two models, in fact. One LLC, the flashy, paper-thin version she thought was real. The other, quietly registered under a near-identical name, was mine. Fully loaded with trademarks, real contracts, supplier agreements, digital assets, and brand rights. Cassandra's version looked real enough to fool the average investor. But behind the curtain, it owned nothing. I let her think she was building something. All the while, I was building the trap. A month passed. Then two. Construction began. We hired vendors. I brought on two trusted designers who'd worked with me in Seattle, gave them NDA-protected access to the real files. Cassandra looped in Nico, who began calling himself lead creative strategist in emails. He showed up to meetings in linen jackets and tinted glasses. Called me maestro, like it was a joke. I smiled back. Let him perform. Every puzzle he suggested, I rewired. Every concept he pitched, I tweaked just enough to ensure he couldn't claim ownership. They didn't notice. They were too busy orbiting each other. 3 weeks before launch, I walked into the half-finished space on 3rd and Valencia. The air still smelled like sawdust and latex paint. One of the clue rooms was dimly lit, a series of two-way mirrors being installed. It was there that I had a thought. What if the final clue, the one that unlocks the end of the experience, was hidden behind a mirror? Not just any mirror. A mirror you look into and see yourself alone, with no one behind you. A betrayal puzzle. You trust the wrong clue. Follow the wrong figure. Get misled, and when the lights shift, the real answer is in the place you ignored all along. It was a metaphor, of course, but it was also damn good design, and no one but me would understand why it worked. By now, Cassandra had begun lining up the press. She invited influencers, clients, industry press, even a few luxury brand liaisons from Napa and LA. This was her world, spectacle. She asked me if I'd be okay giving a speech at the soft launch. I told her I had something perfect in mind. I used to think the cruelest thing someone could do to you is lie. But that's not it. The cruelest thing is to make you feel invisible while doing it, to walk past you in the hallway, kiss your cheek at dinner, draft business plans with your name on them, all while giving pieces of themselves to someone else in darkened hotel rooms and vanished chat threads. Still, I said nothing. Not when I found the messages. Not when she introduced Nico as a creative consultant. Not when she talked excitedly about our new venture like it was going to save our marriage. I smiled. I listened. I nodded. And beneath it all, I planned. Construction had begun on the flagship location. The physical space was real, a 2-story, concrete-framed corner lot in the heart of the Mission District, retrofitted from what used to be an underground jazz bar. The bones were perfect for what I needed: confusing corridors, vaulted ceilings, pre-existing service tunnels I could turn into misdirection paths. We were 3 weeks in, and Cassandra was in full command of the image building. Her event planning instincts kicked in with surgical precision: influencer outreach, preliminary press, cocktail partners, floral palettes. She was alive again. That was the word for it. There was a glow to her, and for anyone watching from the outside, they might have mistaken it for love. But it wasn't love. It was momentum. She thought she was in control. She thought I was letting her win. Every day, I arrived at the construction site early. I oversaw the electrical schematics, lighting control rigging, RFID locking systems. My background wasn't just design, it was behavioral architecture. I knew how to make a room feel like it had a personality, how to make silence say something. I'd worked alone for years. This time, I brought in 2 trusted colleagues under non-disclosure, not freelancers, not hired by the official LLC. These 2 worked directly with me, off the books, paid through the real company, Enigma House, LLC, spelled correctly, owned solely by me. They thought it was an advanced side project, a duplicate build for testing concepts. I told them the client wanted a controlled version in case the main one didn't pass fire code. It wasn't a lie. It was a diversion. Meanwhile, Cassandra held meetings with Nico, often without me. When I was there, he treated me like some retired professor, polite, but dismissive. He'd lean back in chairs, crack jokes, pitch big ideas like he was auditioning for a TED Talk. Most of them were noise, mirrors, fog, disappearing props. Cassandra nodded enthusiastically at all of it. He just gets the emotional side, she said once. It's more than puzzles. It's performance. I gave a soft smile. You're right. We need both. She thought I was finally understanding her. That after years of isolating in my designs, I was stepping into her world. What she didn't know, I'd already bought the domain enigmahouseevents.com out from under her. Registered through a shell corp redirected to a landing page under my version of the company, not live yet, but waiting. That was the beauty of it. Everyone was building the same house. Only I knew which walls would hold. The contracts were the trickiest part. Cassandra wanted to streamline everything, one set of vendor agreements under our shared LLC. She suggested using her firm's legal templates, but I insisted we get a neutral legal review. She rolled her eyes but agreed, assuming I was just being overly cautious, like always. In truth, every neutral contract I used was filtered through Daniel, my real attorney. Vendor agreements that looked like co-ownership actually funneled ownership of intellectual property to a holding entity I'd quietly formed, Crucible Design Concepts Incorporated, which Cassandra didn't even know existed. Each puzzle element, each storyline, each room's concept, all legally mine. Not in my name, but in my control. Even the designs Cassandra contributed, color schemes, layout suggestions, were funneled through suggestion boards I exported to copyright under Crucible. She thought she was building equity. I was building leverage. Some nights, she came home glowing. One evening, she poured herself a glass of wine and told me a brand activation company in LA wanted to feature our flagship venue in an upcoming design magazine. They were calling it the new wave of immersive luxury. She laughed to herself. Feels like this is really happening, doesn't it? I said, it does. Then she leaned against the kitchen counter and said something I hadn't heard in years. You're different lately. I turned. How do you mean? She looked at me like she was afraid to say it, like she wasn't sure if I'd take it the wrong way. You seemed more open, more present. That part hurt. Not because it was true, but because of how wrong it was. She mistook my silence for closeness, my softness for peace. All she was really seeing was stillness. Stillness before movement. Cassandra and Nico began hosting pre-launch walkthroughs for select influencers. Just previews, nothing operational yet. But Nico would post teaser reels on Instagram, always from angles that made him look central. A guiding force. The magician at the helm. He referred to himself as the chief story architect in his captions. He wasn't listed anywhere in the legal filings. That was intentional. I never blocked his involvement. I just never formalized it. Let him perform. Let him believe. His public posts would become their own evidence later. The more I gave him rope, the more he wrapped it around himself. One afternoon, I stayed behind after a walkthrough. The construction crew was wrapping up, cables scattered across the floor, dust hanging in the air. I stepped into the final room, the one no one but me and Elise had access to yet. For mirrored walls. Soundproofed. A final clue hidden in plain sight. No props. No buttons. No fog. Just silence and your own reflection, until you realize one of the mirrors isn't real. Behind it is a corridor only visible under specific lighting. You can't see the path until you stop looking for a show and start noticing what's missing. That was the final room. Not just for the guests. For them, too. By mid-June, Cassandra had started referring to Nico more casually in conversation. She mentioned a last-minute trip she had to LA for client events. I didn't ask questions. Didn't press. She volunteered more when she felt safe. That was the goal. Let them feel untouchable. She'd begun calling the venue our redemption arc to friends. I overheard her say it on a call. We went through a rough patch, but Marcus and I are back. Honestly, I think the project saved us. There was pride in her voice. Sincerity, even. And I believe she wanted it to be true, to rewrite the narrative before it collapsed. If the world thought we were building something together, maybe the rot beneath it wouldn't matter. But rot doesn't go away when you paint over it. It spreads. People assume revenge is loud, that it's glass shattering in the night or screaming in a driveway. But real revenge, clean revenge, doesn't announce itself. It waits. It watches. It builds itself out of the very things its targets take for granted. And when it finally arrives, it's already too late to run. By early July, the final stages of the build were in motion. Walls were painted. Electrical runs were tested. The first official preview was booked, a small tech group from Seattle that wanted to do a dry run before their product launch. They weren't just customers. They were cover. Cassandra loved the buzz. She'd had her agency prepare a limited PR packet, complete with logoed notebooks and a teaser deck for future investors. She was spending more time in makeup, more time on phone calls, more time posting Instagram stories where she happened to walk through the unfinished lobby, smiling like it was already a success. She didn't just want the business to grow. She wanted it to shine on her. I don't say that bitterly. She'd always needed to be seen. That's what first drew me to her. In college, I was the silent one sketching mazes on graph paper. She was the star of every themed mixer. People gravitated toward her, and for a while, she pulled me into her orbit. But eventually, the spotlight moved on, and she needed someone else to step into it with her. Nico was stepping harder. Now that the venue had physical form, he treated it like a personal stage. He showed up to walkthroughs in designer jackets, introduced himself to potential clients as creative director of the Enigma House experience, and gave interviews to micro-podcasts that specialized in tech meets theater content. I heard one. He said, "It's about presence, immersion. You walk into this space, and suddenly, you're not in San Francisco anymore. You're inside a narrative. That's what I bring. That cinematic tension." He mentioned my name only once. Marcus is brilliant, a mad scientist. I just take his raw energy and shape it. Raw energy? I don't remember laughing, but I did smile. Let the magician have his monologue. Meanwhile, I began final testing on the real mirror room. The space was simple, deceptively so. A clean white floor. Polished walls with precision tint. A corridor that appears as a reflection until you trigger it with the right angle of light. The puzzle wasn't the mechanism. It was the moment, when the player realizes they've been staring at themselves for 5 minutes, trying to solve the version of them that isn't even real. And only then does the room give them the way out. The metaphor was intentional, and it wasn't lost on me that Nico and Cassandra would never make it through it. About a week before the soft launch, Cassandra invited a select group of ambassadors for a private champagne tour. These were influencers, people whose brand was being seen in places before they opened. I stayed quiet during the walkthrough. Let them photograph the half-finished sets, sip from gold-rimmed flutes, and post mysterious selfies in front of unfinished puzzle walls. Nico led the group with flair. At one point, he tapped a corner tile and whispered, "It's always the thing no one touches that opens everything." He had no idea that phrase was literally true in the real final room, but only in the version he didn't know existed. That was the pleasure in all this. Not cruelty. Just symmetry. Later that night, Cassandra pulled me aside while we stood in the empty lobby. The space had cleared out, music faded, glasses clinking faintly from the break room where the caterers were packing up. "You were really quiet tonight," she said. Was I? Yeah. You used to love watching people solve your puzzles. I shrugged. I guess I'm watching a different puzzle now. She paused. For a split second, I saw it, a flash of discomfort behind her eyes. But then it passed. She reached out, touched my chest lightly. "You've really shown up for this, Marcus. I mean it. I know it took a lot to let this become big." I held her hand for a beat, then said, "You deserve big." She smiled. "So do you." She meant it. That was the strange thing. I don't think Cassandra thought of what she was doing with Nico as betrayal anymore. She'd rewritten it in her mind, something that happened when we were disconnected. A byproduct of loneliness. Something now behind us. She wasn't malicious. Just edited. That's what people like her do. They don't destroy history. They revise it. The next day, Nico made a mistake. He posted a behind-the-scenes video of one of the rooms. Nothing scandalous, just a fly-through of the props being installed, plus a voiceover of him saying, "Every detail tells a story. The question is, are you the hero or the illusion?" He tagged himself as co-founder. The problem? The clip included a puzzle we hadn't made public yet, one of the ones I'd registered privately through Crucible Design. Within the hour, I downloaded the video, logged the timestamp, captured screenshots. Then I called my IP attorney and asked him a simple question. If someone publicly claims co-ownership over an asset they didn't legally contribute to, and I've documented proof, do I have grounds for a correction? His answer: if he profits from it? Yes. If you lose business from it? Yes. If you want to make an example of him? Definitely yes. I told him I wasn't ready. Yet. We scheduled a future conversation. At the next planning meeting, I handed Cassandra a revised production checklist. Just standard project management, budgets, vendor timelines, security protocols for opening night. But embedded within it were subtle pivots, shifts that gave me complete logistical control of the soft launch experience. Guest list approval, media routing, room order flow. She glanced at it. "You reorganized everything." I smiled. "We're almost live. Time to optimize." She nodded. "I like this version of you." I said, "So do I." She didn't realize I'd already rewritten the guest list software. That Nico's name wasn't attached to the public-facing team profile. That the media packet, The one being handed to actual press only listed 2 executive names, Marcus Weller, founder and creative director, and Cassandra Weller, events and experience lead. No Nico. His contributions would be public. His credit? Vanished. And he wouldn't know until it was printed. 3 nights before the launch, I stayed late at the venue. Everyone else had gone home. I sat alone in the observation room above Puzzle 3, where guests would trigger a silent countdown once they figured out how to use their shadows to spell the solution across a backlit wall. It was the kind of design that no one notices until it clicks. Just like what I was doing here. In the dim light, I looked down into the room and saw myself faintly reflected in the glass. And for the first time in weeks, I let myself feel something. Not anger. Not grief. Just finality. This was the part they never show you in the movies, the long, boring quiet of revenge. The administrative elegance of it. The repetition of documentation. The endless patience. I wasn't orchestrating an explosion. I was building a room no one could escape from, because they wouldn't even realize they were inside it. There's a silence that happens in buildings the night before they open. It's not the silence of nothingness. It's the silence of completion. The kind you hear in an art gallery the moment before the doors unlock, when everything is perfectly hung and leveled and waiting to be judged. That's what the venue felt like. No more dust. No more wiring. The carpet had been laid. The scent diffusion system Cassandra had insisted on was pumping out something subtle and expensive. Everything was in place, and none of it was hers. I'd done the final walkthrough alone. The puzzle paths were clean. The lighting responded exactly on cue. The sensors were responsive. The central clue routing system, the one Nico still believed was controlled by the shared LLC, ran through my server now. The trademarked Enigma House brand was also mine. Officially, legally, irrefutably mine. The other company, Cassandra's Enigma House, looked active from the outside. Website live. Instagram curated. Elegant materials with the minimalist U in-house stretching just enough to feel exclusive. But the domain she used was registered to a secondary shell company I owned. One she never noticed when she handed off branding to her design intern. Tomorrow, at exactly 8:05 p.m., her login credentials would stop working. The website would redirect. And the version of this business that she thought she'd launched would vanish in front of a room full of press and clients. The final prep meeting was quiet. Just me, Cassandra, and a caterer going over timings and guest flow. She was calm, for once. Not giddy, not over-functioning. Just tired in that satisfied way she used to be after pulling off a big wedding weekend. She moved through the room like someone who knew she'd earned tomorrow's attention. "You know," she said as she checked the champagne flutes, "I'm glad we're doing this together." "Really?" I nodded. "You made it happen." She looked at me. "So did you." Her voice softened. "I know I've said this before, but it feels like we're back. Like we've rebuilt something." I didn't answer right away. She looked at me like she wanted confirmation. A verbal contract. Something to ease the guilt she didn't want to name. All I said was, "Let's just make it a good night." She smiled and accepted that. Maybe she needed to believe it. That evening, she threw a small dinner for close friends and a few people from the investor list. I didn't object. It made sense. She needed to perform calm, intimate confidence the night before the show. She hosted it at our house. A bold move, considering. But maybe she thought it made a statement. "See? We're solid. We're winning. We're building this together." Nico came, of course. He arrived late, brought a bottle of something French and unnecessary, and told the same story twice about doing close-up magic at a TEDx event that accidentally turned into a standing ovation. I stayed out of his way, sat by the window, spoke when spoken to. Cassandra poured wine, kissed cheeks, played the good host. From across the room, Nico caught my eye. Not challengingly, curiously, like he couldn't quite figure out where I fit into all this. I wasn't threatened. I wasn't proud. I was just present. He came over after dessert. "Tomorrow's the big day," he said. "You ready?" "I've been ready," I said. "Calm. Even." He smiled. "Bet you never thought you'd be part of something like this." I looked at him. "Like what?" He motioned toward the table. "Something public. Loud. Celebrated. You've always struck me as more of a behind-the-scenes guy." I let the silence hang between us for a second too long, then said, "Some things are better designed from the shadows." He grinned, a little uncertain now, and looked for a way to laugh it off. Before he could, Cassandra called him over to open another bottle. He walked away still smiling. but I could see the flicker of unease in his posture. Just a shift in weight, like a man trying to convince himself he still knew where the floor was. After the last guest left, Cassandra and I stood in the kitchen. Just the two of us. "You were good tonight," she said. "You too." She leaned against the counter. "We did this." I nodded. "Yes." She looked down at her hands. "I needed it, you know. I needed something to feel right again." I could have said a dozen things in that moment. Asked her if she meant the business or the marriage. Asked if Nico was part of that, or if she'd simply placed him in the blind spot between distraction and need. But I didn't ask. I just said, "Tomorrow will be the reveal." And she smiled, thinking I meant the business. Later that night, I reviewed everything one last time. The legal backups were stored and encrypted. The server redirect was scheduled. The guest list was clean, Nico's name omitted from any formal credit. The press packets, already printed, listed only two founders, Marcus Weller, Cassandra Weller. No mention of a consultant. No co-creator. No magician. At precisely 9 p.m., the first of the scheduled press outlets would receive a follow-up package by email. It contained clean records of all design copyrights and brand registrations tied directly to Enigma House, LLC. Not house. Not shared. Not hers. Mine. All of it. I didn't sleep. I didn't need to. Some people get jittery before they pull a trigger. I don't. I wait. I verify. I let the math sit. If you've built the structure correctly, it will fall on its own. That's what tomorrow was. Not an explosion. Just gravity. Some people think revenge is about shouting, about catching someone red-handed and throwing a chair across the room. But the best revenge isn't about noise. It's about lighting. You don't need to confront someone when you can just reveal them. You don't need to break anything if you built the foundation so carefully, it was already waiting to collapse. All I had to do was flip the switch. The evening began as Cassandra had planned, with grace and spectacle. Guests arrived through a candlelit corridor lined with gold-accented frames and geometric shadows cast by pinpoint uplights. Ambient music played on a loop, a custom track Nico had sourced from a composer he met at a startup afterparty. There were name tags printed in Helvetica Neue. Champagne flutes passed on copper trays. Branded coasters. A live projection on the wall cycling through keywords like immersive, discovery, story flow, narrative tension. It was everything she wanted, curated, admired, highbrow with a whisper of exclusivity. She glided through the space in a charcoal gown, greeting each investor and influencer like royalty. Smiling, linking arms, posing for photos. And Nico? He soaked it in like a man who thought he was about to be knighted. He wore a midnight blue suit. Spoke in sound bites. Kept glancing at the small crowd of startup media reps that had RSVP'd. At one point, I caught him practicing something near the coat check, mouthing words silently to himself like a mental rehearsal. He thought he was going to speak. He wasn't. At 7:55 p.m., I stood near the tech station just off the main corridor. The crowd had mostly gathered. Cassandra was wrapping a conversation with a senior editor from an event design magazine. I watched her check her phone. She was waiting on the moment. She caught my eye and gave a small nod. It was time for the founder's introduction. The agreed-upon plan was simple. I'd speak first, briefly. Then Cassandra would thank the attendees. Nico would close with a short, experienced lead-in. That was their version. But we weren't following that version anymore. I stepped to the center of the room. A warm hush fell. The crowd quieted easily. They were the kind who'd been trained at gallery openings and curated pop-ups. I didn't touch the mic. Just raised a hand and let the room come to me. "Good evening," I said. "And thank you." A pause. Calm. Quiet. Most of you know me as the puzzle guy. The builder. The one who doesn't usually stand in the spotlight. Soft laughter. And you'd be right. I don't speak often. But when I do, it's because every piece of the system is ready. Every lock is tested. Every door opens exactly when it's supposed to. Behind me, the main screen lit up with the Enigma House logo, spelled properly. The crowd clapped automatically, conditioned. I continued. This experience was designed not just to entertain, but to challenge assumptions. About control. About authorship. About who's actually running the game. Now the crowd's energy shifted, just slightly. Enough to notice. To everyone who helped make this happen, I thank you. And to those who believed they could control the illusion, I let that hang. Sometimes, the final twist is that you were never holding the key. At exactly 8 p.m., the The server flipped. Phones buzzed. QR codes on every branded coaster and invite, previously pointing to enigmahouse.com, now redirected to www.enigmahouse.com. A live press release appeared. It was short, clean, legally airtight. Enigma House is an independent immersive design experience created and led by Marcus Weller. All concepts, systems, and intellectual property are owned by Weller under Crucible Design Concepts Incorporated. This launch event marks the debut of the brand's official flagship location. Attached: legal filings, trademark certificates, IP breakdowns, design credits. There was no mention of Nico Lang. There was no shared LLC. There was no Cassandra. I stepped away from the center as the applause, confused but still polite, scattered. Cassandra walked up to me as if everything was normal. Until she saw the screen behind me. Until she saw the spelling. Her smile faltered. Wait, why is it spelled? I leaned in, quiet enough for only her. You built a fake relationship. I built a fake company. She blinked. Marcus. But I was already walking away. Nico was near the back of the room, still waiting. Still assuming he had time. Then someone whispered in his ear. Then another guest showed him the site. He went pale. Looked around. His name wasn't on anything. He moved toward me, fast. Hey, he said, voice low. What the hell is this? I shrugged. The show, I said. You said you had a surprise for the guests. I'm not listed anywhere. I know. You can't do that. I already did. He laughed, short and humorless. You think this means anything? I've got footage. I've got interviews lined up. People know You claimed co-founder status on a design you had no legal role in. On video, multiple times. I archived all of it. His mouth opened. I never signed. That's right. You didn't. You wanted the attention. You just didn't want the liability. He stared at me. Good luck booking another tech event, I added, then walked past him toward the hallway. He didn't follow. Cassandra caught up to me in the back corridor. Marcus, what did you do? I showed them what you built. She shook her head. You sabotaged everything. No. I just made sure the right credits were assigned. You can't just erase me. I didn't. You never signed on to the real project. She stared at me. This is revenge. No, I said. This is structure. I told you. I build rooms. I build systems that only collapse when someone triggers the wrong switch. You're ending my career. No, Cassandra. You did. By 8:25 p.m., the shift was complete. Nico had left the venue. His face was already trending in the wrong corners of Twitter, comments about fake titles, vanity fraud. He couldn't escape a lie. Cassandra stood in a corner of the lobby, arms crossed, speaking quietly to a client she once called her biggest anchor account. The woman turned and walked away mid-sentence. The crowd didn't riot. No drama. No screams. Just confusion. Awkwardness. A few polite departures. A few quiet laughs. One of the reporters, a young woman from a Business Trends podcast, approached me. She asked, what inspired this kind of story structure? I smiled. It started, I said, when someone underestimated me.